Hello and welcome back to Dusting History. I've got an interesting one today. This is an unidentified soldier in Union cavalry uniform with banjo, sword and pipe. As you can see, it's been hand tinted, and a lot of the work today is going to be undoing that damage that was very commonly done on images like this. Most of the work today is going to be done in Photoshop. You can see he has rouge on his cheeks and some pretty aggressive yellow paint, which I guess is meant to represent the gilding on his uniform. So I'll crop out the image. Then I'll desaturate it, and as you can see, it's quite low contrast. So I'll put a curves adjustment layer on the image and just do a small adjustment here to bring a bit more contrast back into the picture. What it's really done is made those gold paint bits, like on the top of his sword and on his buttons, on his cap, that cross on his cap, really glow white, and I'll have to paint all those away. So I've duplicated these layers. I'll collapse them down just so that I can use the neural networks. And what I'm going to use is photo restoration. I'm not going to use any of the face adjustment stuff because I think it makes it look too painterly. But what I'm going to do is set the photo restoration to about 40, and that gets rid of some of the more aggressive grain. And I'm going to make that a new layer. And then I'm going to set up another layer the same, but I'm going to put scratch reduction right up high. So I have two adjusted layers, one with scratches and one without. Actually, I think they're more like cracks than scratches. I haven't really seen that before on too many images. So now with those two layers, if I toggle, you can see that the scratch reduction has removed parts of his buttons and his shirt and a few other details. So now with a mask, I'm going to paint between those two layers and restore everything that the scratch reduction technique got rid of. Now around here I'm going to start adding a little bit more of the detail of his face back in, because when I zoomed in you could tell that the scratch reduction had also minimized a lot of the grain in some of the detail areas, so some of his cheeks looked like they were losing a bit too much detail for my liking. Right, now I'm really going to speed up the footage as I start to repair all the scratches by hand and all the blemishes. I say by hand, but I'm really using fantastic tools inside of Photoshop. It's not like the old days where I had to mix all the greys and paint them. I used to do it manually with literally with paint and brush on black and white images back in the day. So this is a real time saver. Now with that done, I'm going to leave Photoshop for a minute and go to Topaz Photo AI and just put a sharpen filter on the image. Now I think I've gotten rid of most of the dust and the damage. And generally this is an aggressive, or can be an aggressive sharpen. And so what I tend to do is never use this as the final result. I'll bring this back into Photoshop and mix it back. But it is nice just to bring a little bit of crispness to the image. What it also tends to do is sharpen up any of the dots and spots that I've missed, and they start to ping out as little hot dots. So I'll have to start doing another bunch of repair in Photoshop to clean that up as well. So a quick export, here it is in Photoshop, and you can see I can just fade that back to a level that I'm happy with. And now it's back to using the remove tool to get rid of all those spots that have been highlighted by the sharpen filter. Great. Now I need to fix the damage on the buttons and things. So I've been looking at some old photographs as well, seeing if I can find anything that I could copy and paste into this image, but I ended up going to more modern photography of the armour and did my best to research at least similar weapons and buttons and things from that era, so I could work with a bit more resolution. So here I'm just going to try and restore the hilt of the sword, being careful just to paint in the bits I need. So first up I'll just try and align this photograph and then sort of chip back in as much as I can to keep as much of the original image where that white paint has not obliterated the image underneath. And I want to try and be as careful as I can to not invent something. I know the sword's not identical, but I struggle to find anything similar. So sort of painting back and then painting back in and then adding and subtracting with masks on that image. You can see I'm just sort of trying to be respectful to the original image. And then a little bit of painting the two layers together once that's done. And also setting a defocus so that there's a level of blur on that image. I also fortunately found a buckle that looks to be similar to the one that this gentleman was wearing. And as you can see, the one he's got on is almost flat white from the paint over. So I'm just going to vaguely push this into position, trying not to distort the metal too much. Wasn't super successful with that. Desaturate that again. and just paint it in where I need one more time. I'm setting the focus. That's always tricky, the focus, because just a defocus in Photoshop sometimes looks too blurry, and then if you don't do enough, it looks too sharp. It can be a real pain. One of the other things I want to do as well is just put a little shadow on the edge of the buckle, so it looks like the banjo is shadowing it. So I'll do a little adjustment layer here, add a mask, and then paint that back in, just so there's a little bit of darkening on that buckle. I think it helps it sit into the image and not stand out too much. Next, onto buttons, and I've tried several images to find buttons I like. These ones I started with. I particularly like that little bent one up the top, which looks like it could belong on that bright spot under his chin in the dark part there. So I'll take the color out of all of those, adjust them a little bit, and then add masks to each of their layers, or to that layer, and then see if I can paint them in a way that makes them look natural. They are a little low res for my liking. Now here I went on a bit of a journey thinking I would find buttons to suit his sleeves, and then I was trying to think about how I was going to fix the brocade, the stripes on his arms and on his lapels and things, and would I source images online that had that kind of material and try and warp it and paint it in? Is it worth doing because it's so out of focus? So I went through on this journey with this button here, and then I realized none of that was actually working. It wasn't really looking very good. The perspective wasn't great. It just made a mush when you zoomed out. So at the end of the day, I just got the remove tool and removed the paint first to see what I was left with underneath. See, I'm just removing those hot white spots. And I think that sort of out of focus button works really well, like just without doing anything. So that gave me the confidence just to keep moving around the image here and just start to try and paint these things out rather than go crazy trying to stick a photographic button on top. And you can see there I've sort of left a ring in there, and then that made a big blob when I got rid of it, and then I ended up cloning a little bit of his darker finger down over the top of that through here just with the clone tool. But then that still popped quite bright, so I just started to knock that back more and more. I like the idea that he's sitting there with a ring on his finger that tells a bit of the story, but I didn't want it to be as bright as what was left after I took away the bright paint. And you can see here there's these two long stripes, and then there's a little dot down the bottom, and I was wondering if that dot was a button that was highlighted or something. So you'll see I'll refer back to the original image here and there just to see, and that has been painted in as a little piece of gold paint, so I was confident to remove that as well. Always good to keep referring back to the original image and making sure I'm inventing as little as possible. Now the one thing I do feel about those stripes is they feel a little dull, so I'm just going to put a little adjustment layer, a little gain up on that. I keep saying a little a lot, but you know what I mean, a subtle amount, and just to pale that up a bit. So when you zoom out, your eye is drawn to those stripes without them, so they look kind of gold or shiny or bright, but they're not as dull as they were when I just painted away the paint. Now this cross is a bit confusing. Well, actually I'm more confused by what's underneath. I can't quite tell what that is, and I think I looked at a couple of hundred of these Civil War images and more modern images of uniforms trying to find a reference for that peaked cap and could not. So I thought I'd just take the cross off and let it be what it is. Now here you can see attempt 2 with some higher res buttons from a more modern photograph. With a little bit of defocus and a little bit of grading, these buttons will sit in much better than the old ones did. Building on the success of just painting away some of that overpaint, I decided to do the same thing on that stripe along the edge of his uniform using the remove tool. I figured if I could at least create a clean base, I could then go back in and decide whether I pulled some brocade from another image, find out what that looks like, try and put something in clean. But you can see here the remove tool did an okay job, but it was a bit blurry and mushy, so I do spend a bit of time trying to repair and eventually just clone brush a little bit of fabric detail back along that edge. While I'm at it, I'm just going to remove these two buttons because they're not useful to me, and I'll replace them with clean reference buttons later. So I found these two images, and what I like about this dark one is it's got some tilted buttons, which I think would look really great on his belly, where the buttons are sort of hanging on a bit of an angle. Again, I'll try and grade them down, match the scale from against the original photography, and defocus them enough to place them into the image and not have them call attention to themselves. I also think, given the amount of flipping and flopping I've done with found reference, I think this image is actually printed in reverse. And when I was looking for that brocade for that line, I couldn't find very many photos that actually had it. And I began to wonder whether it was actually painted on when it was never there originally. You can see here, I'm about to try and organize a brush to show you, there's a line there and a line there, but then down below it doesn't continue, there's nothing there. And so looking at a lot of these where they have that painted in, I couldn't find reference of a similar uniform that consistently either showed it or did not. So I elected to paint something in, but just paint it in really, really gently, just indicate a line and basically sit on the fence as to whether he had one or not. So, and I'm going to do that just by grading up the plate with an adjustment layer and then painting back with a mask to just brighten what's in the emulsion in the plate by itself. So just a simple line like that, and then I played with different ways of screening it on or using different math ops to to get that to sit. Ultimately, I think I just go back to a basic screen and then just paint it very gently. Darkening it down in areas where it's in more shadow. And basically just making it subtle, so it's you know, either there or not there. Not really sure I did the right thing at the last minute there. Now, with a few last little touch-ups to do, I think I'm pretty much there. I think some of the stuff behind him here just felt a little kind of like damage or watermarks or whatever. I'm not entirely sure I liked it, so quick little clean up and we're done. I'm always amazed how much a little bit of TLC brings to these images. They go from something you'll just flick by quickly to an image you'll spend a little while having a look at and just wondering about who that was. Once again, thanks for joining me. See you next time.